Hi, welcome back to Spring CS170. I know I was going to cover pivots with this lecture, but I decided to hit a couple other things just for review. Number one, I actually need to pop up this Excel wildcard again because I forgot to include this into the announcement. I know some of you look at the announcements to look for things to uh, find for the videos. That's why we do the shorter video clips, so you can kind of search through it for certain topics. And then you can easily jump to those videos. So I didn't mention the wildcard thing, so I'm going to just mention it here, and then I'm going to put it into the announcement when I post this. so so as I said in the last lecture, you have like this couple of ways you can look at wildcards. One of them is with the question mark, which would be like if you have a single character that you want to make it open. So let's say you have a like B question mark and G or something like that. So that question mark could be anything. It could be A, could be I, whatever, right? So that's what it means when you do the question mark to search by a single character. With the asterisk, which is the more common way which we do things, and I put that out there in the earlier wildcard lecture, that pretty much says like everything, following or before that. So if you put the asterisk at the end of, let's say, BIG, so anything that starts off with BIG, you'll have that. Or if you put the asterisk before BIG, then you'll have everything before that. It could be 5 letters, it could be 6 letters, it doesn't matter, right? So the asterisk is pretty wide open on how you can do the wildcard, and that's probably the more common way to do it. The tilde would be basically like escape character, which you normally have seen like in the JavaScript stuff also. You only need it when you want to put in like a real question mark or a real asterisk into your string, right? So for whatever reason, like that's a legitimate thing, and you don't want to use that as part of your search, then you use this tilde as an escape character. It's not really within the scope of this class. You guys are probably not going to have to deal with that. So for the purpose of this class, I would say asterisk is the main thing that you're going to be looking at. And similar down here, like you're probably not going to use the match and search functions. The VLOOKUP, I think the way we've been teaching in this class, it's really kind of, you have a couple of things that either you're going to do an exact match or approximate match, and you'll work your way down that, and you're not doing HLOOKUP. So really, in terms of this, it's really the average if, count if, sum if, max if, and stuff like that that you want to make sure you consider this in terms of wildcard searching. That's very common. Like, so you have a whole bunch of database records, or you have a whole bunch of records you want to look through, and then you want a certain criteria. Maybe it's a region, maybe it's all the cities in California or something like that. Then you're going to use this wildcard, and most commonly you're going to use this asterisk. Okay, so I know I mentioned this in the last lecture, but I'm mentioning it again. It is in the resources for my section, which is down here. So take a look at it, play around with it on the sheet for yourself, and then you'll be able to see what I'm getting at with the Excel wildcard. The other thing I added in here was the statistical functions, right? So I know we covered that earlier, but I figured I would put this up here, and you guys can play around with it, put in your stuff. I'm going to do stuff on the video with you right now, but you can fill in some of the stuff on your own and use this as reference for the final exam. And I'll give you extra credit for it, right? And, for the extra credit, as I said at the beginning of the semester, when you look at the extra credit, for a lot of people, and this is like through, my past experience with teaching this class, for a lot of people, it makes a difference in pushing your grade up by at least 1/2 grade, if not even a full grade in some cases, right? So, I think the way we structured extra credit, I don't mean to make it like super hard or anything like that. Neither does the TAs. The TAs, most of them are using the class attendance or the recitation attendance, watching their videos as extra credit, right? And then we also had the extra credit assignment at the beginning of the semester. And then I have my extra credit, which is basically just to try to help you prepare for the exams. You know, it doesn't take that much. It's really something you should be doing anyway to prepare for your exams. So you do it, it helps you prepare for the exams, and it helps you to potentially boost your grade up by at least a half a grade in a lot of cases, right? So if you're breezing through this class with, you know, a high A, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's fine, right? But for other people who might end up in that borderline between, you know, one grade and another, that extra credit make a difference. So it's no skin off your back, and it's something that you probably want to be doing to prepare for the exam anyway. So I think just a, you know, reminder that you know, extra credit could be helpful. So please try and take a look at it. So I'm going to go through some of these different things. I also uploaded to here, as you can see, statistical functions for your reference, and you can play around with it. So let's take a look at this. So you can see here, you have the if statement already, right? So if C2 is greater than B2, you're over budget. Otherwise, you're within budget, right? And then there's another space here, which is blank, but you can say, well, if it's over budget, well, how much is it over budget, let's say, right? So I can do something like this, equals if, and let's say this one, over budget, and then I'm just going to put in something right now just to test this out. True and false. Okay, so that's kind of what we expected, right? Now, this is to say, if it's over budget, I'm going to calculate something, right? So let's go back to here. And let's say if it's over budget, then I want to say this cell minus this cell. And you get that, right? And just for the sake of like reminding people, this is obviously a dollar amount. So then I'm going to go to here, click on that, and then you get $1, right? And then to remind people to do the fill, I'm just going to take the bottom left, drag it down, and you get that, right? So all the stuff you notice, right? Within budget, it's false, which is what I define by saying false here, right? But if it's over budget, which is these two, then it does a calculation of this versus this, right? So hopefully this covered quite a bit of stuff for you. You can see what I just did here. Okay, so again, I did the if, which is dependent on this if, right? So you have this if here, and then I did this one here. Okay, and then I said, if it's over budget, I'm going to calculate how much over budget it is. Otherwise, I put in false, right? And then I copied it down by taking this bottom left here and dragging it down. Okay. And another quick reminder, I can do Control tilde. If you look on your keyboard, it's like on the bottom left and top left, Control tilde, and you can see all the formulas on your sheet. Okay, so that's helpful too, right? So let me flip it back, and you're back to here. Okay, all right. So that's one thing that would be useful. You can try and do that. Oh yeah, and so this is part of extra credit. So if you can kind of play around with these things and then just send it to me or on an email, then you know I'll count that as your extra credit for this week, right? But like I said, these are the type of things that you should be doing as part of like taking notes to prepare for the final exam. Okay, I'm not going to check these sheets, right? Whether they're right or wrong. This is for you. It's not for me, right? So you go ahead and do that, then send it to me, and I'll take that as extra credit. Now for here, I'm going to do this as a VLOOKUP. Okay, so let's do this. So you basically have all the grades, right? These are the scores of people, and then if they are from 0 to 65, actually less than 65, you're a fail. If you're at 65 and greater, you're passing. And then if you're 90 and greater, you're excellent, right? So let's say E equals to V lookup. Okay, and so we're gonna say this right here. And then I'm gonna say, well, what am I looking up? I'm gonna be looking up over here. That's my table array. And then my column index is 1. And I want the approximate match. And we're done. Okay. Actually, I made a mistake. It should be column 2. Right? Column 2. Right. So remember, unlike JavaScript, when you're looking at these different columns, it starts off with column 1, column 2, right? So I was thinking in terms of JavaScript, where the first box of the array starts off with 0, right? So in this case, it's 1 actually. So that's why that should be 2 here, right? So this is column 1, this is column 2, okay? Now, while we're here, let's refresh on the idea of absolute and relative reference, right? So there's no dollar signs in here, right? So that means this is relative reference, right? If I want to make absolute reference, I need to put dollar signs in here. That way, when I start to copy the cells down, oops, when I start to copy the cells down, those things will get locked. The column and the row will get locked, right? Oops, what did I do here? 9F11, right? Why is that messed up now? Actually, why do I have that here? So this should be 2. Right. Don't know how that 112 got in there. We put this dollar in here. Okay, so that's what I wanted, right? So there's the dollar signs to make it absolute reference on both the beginning and end part of this range, right? So E9 and F11, E9, F11, I'm gonna lock this in. So when I go to here, I can drag it down. And there you go, right? So I've copied the cells down by dragging it down. I could have also done copy and paste. I could have done this, and I could have done copy. This is right mouse button. I could have done copy, and then I could have done paste, okay? So 2 ways to do it. In this case, it was easy for me just to drag it down, and note, you see E dollar nine dollar nine dollar E dollar 9 dollar F dollar 11, which is making an absolute reference. So that way I can drag the formula down and it won't get screwed up. It'll stay doing the lookup against here. Okay, so that covered a bit, right? So that covered the VLOOKUP, that covered approximate match, that covered like absolute cell reference, right? So this covered quite a bit of different things here that you need to know for Excel. Okay, you can see here, excellent, pass, fail, as you would expect, right? Based on this lookup here. So very quickly, the last bit for this page is the if error, right? So if I do equal, let's say I want to look at the ratio of what you sold versus your quota, right? So let's say this divided by this, which is fine, right? And then I'm going to drag this down. All right, now we have an issue here, right? You see division by 0. But I have no idea what happened, right? Like, yeah, in this case, it's easy for you to see what happened, right? But if this is like a very big, complicated sheet, might not be so apparent, right? And really, I'm doing this a little bit simplistically, right? There are ways for you to be able to put in like pretty much troubleshooting information where you can say, oh, okay, here's like what are the inputs that I got, and then that's what was the value that I got, right? But in this case, we don't need to get that sophisticated. So I think all we want to do is just put in an if error here. So I'll put in an if error here, and that formula stays the same. And then I will say, what's the value? I'll say bad input. Then you got bad input, right? A little bit better looking than the other way, not 100% of where I want it to be. And I can just copy it up this too, right? So it's all the same. Okay, so all this if error does is that when it detects something like this, you can do something. In this case, I display bad input, right? Like I said, you could do more sophisticated like diagnostics, to kind of say, well, what the values were passed in that caused this bad input and stuff like that. But that's beyond the scope of this class. All I'm going to show you is just to say if error, okay? And we'll leave it at that. But when you get into like large spreadsheets and stuff like that, having like some diagnostic information like this will help you. So it saves you some grief to try to fix, to look at like bad lookups or anything like that. Anyway, so make note of this, right? If you can take this spreadsheet that I uploaded up into my resources and do a similar thing of what I just did here, then you can pass it back to me as your extra credit. That would be great, okay? And here, you don't have to do anything. This is already set up here for you. You just take a look at it. This is for your own self-study here, right? So this is like calculating your payments and your principal and your interest, right? For a loan. So very common usage for Excel. This is a subtotal. I kind of refer to the subtotal as part of tables. Again, you can see this. One interesting to note, which I didn't mention in the last lecture, is note the range here, right? So the B5 to B20. So what does that mean? It actually recognizes that these are subtotals that don't get included into this, okay? And then you can take this, which is just a straight addition of these four here, and it will equal to this, right? So what this is saying here is when I use this subtotal function, it knows like what's the real record. So the subtotal function is actually pretty quote unquote smart, right? It knows like what's valid here. If I were to apply a filter, it knows to take it out of the filter, all of that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like a smarter version of the straight sum function that you might use. Okay, so if I did a sum here across these and I did a filter, or it had these subtotals in here, like the sum wouldn't know, right? The straight sum function would just get all messed up, right? But the subtotal here, you can see it's smart enough to exclude these quarterly subtotals and just include these. So that's something to note when you say, well, why would you use the sum versus using the subtotal? Okay. Again, you don't have to do anything here. It's just for you to reference. Here, you remember the conditional formatting, right? So if I'm here, you want to say, if greater than 75 and less than 90, let's say make it red, right? Or green, doesn't matter, whatever color, right? It's up to you. So you remember the conditional formatting, like right here. Okay, again, something you can kind of play around with on that. Okay, so this one here, see here, you can do like the average, okay? And you see like the criteria here, okay? So something more again for reference, right? You can play around with this and say, looking at the different types of criteria, you can pull in your number here, okay? Nothing really for you to do except play around with it if you want to, right? And the Countdiff, right? You can see this, okay? So based on these values here, like this one says, if the count of sales over $100 here, then you're going to count that in here, right? So you see in this case, the count of sales is over $100. If I look at this range here, I think just eyeballing it, you can see it's 3, right? You have the 125 to 200 and the 150. Okay. By the same token, you look at here, count of sales by gym, right? So then you're looking over here, and you see gym here twice. Okay. So again, this is just examples. You can take a look at it and you can see the different ways to do your filtering, whether it's by the numbers or by strings. Okay, so good reference, right? Please take a look at it, study it. If there's things in here that you're not sure of why that's happening, then let me know. Okay, so this is, again, I'm looking at this as a study guide for you, and hopefully you can use it that way. Okay. You know, similar type of thing going on here, right? You got your sum going on here. 100 total and total in California. Okay. And that should be it. So really, most of these tabs are really for your self-study. You can play around with it if you want on your own to try more permutations, but that should be it. Really, I think for your extra credit, just do this part, which I just covered in this video. Okay. Again, let me know if you have any questions on this, and then I'm going to cut a video for pivot table shortly.